a slew of headlines because the family separation is not resolved,
and it's worse.
And I understand that this can almost sound like beating a dead horse, but if it's still ongoing, then it's not a dead horse, right? And it needs to be beaten. So the first one was a story that was fairly shocking to me. The White House administration in court tried to say that the ACLU needs to locate the deported parents in order to confirm that they actually, want their kids back. So the logic that they're using boils down to something like, we took these children away and the parents gave up the right to, they said they didn't want their children to come with them when they were deported. The problem is that the majority of these people don't have paperwork indicating that they did agree to not take their children with them. So there's no evidence backing the majority of claims about, they didn't want their kids to come with them. It's like, well, where's your backup to show that that's the case? And they don't have it. And so what they're saying is, well, if the ACLU is going to claim on behalf of these clients that they actually wanted their kids to come with them, then they should have the onus to go find these people that we deported to their original countries and see if they want their children back. Otherwise, what did we do wrong? So if that sounds convoluted and messed up to you, it's because it is.
It's evil.
Yeah. It is. It reminds me in a lot of ways of sexual assault situations where
gaslighting.
Somebody says, someone did this to me, I didn't want them to do this to me, and the other person is like, how do I know you didn't want me to do that to you? It's like, so can you prove you didn't want me to do that to you? And the whole problem with it is, just like in this case, you have to have consent before you do it. It's not up to the ACLU to demonstrate that they didn't have consent. It's up to the group that took the action to show that they had the consent before they took the action. That's what matters. It's not now a question of, can you find them and see if they really wanted their kids. It's like, no, that's irrelevant. The problem happened when you deported them and didn't give them their kids back and didn't have consent to do that, or at least didn't document it, which is no different than it not happening when it comes to something like this. So when people kind of skip that part about did you get consent and then say, well, what happened afterwards? And it's like, it doesn't matter what happened afterwards. What matters is, did you have consent to do this, and can you show this? Or can you at least give some reasonable explanation for how you thought you had this? How is it that this person didn't give you consent, or these people have not supplied any consent? There's no demonstration of consent, and yet you're claiming consent. Well,
Yeah, these are not Labrador Retriever bitches and their puppies being separated. These are people.
If you steal somebody's lab puppy, they don't have to prove that they didn't give it to you.
But,
so this is a quote from the Department of Justice during court. Plaintiffs' counsel should use their considerable resources and their network of law firms, NGOs, volunteers, and others, together with the information that defendants have provided or will soon provide, to establish contact with possible class members in foreign countries, the DOJ said. The administration suggested the ACLU find out whether the deported parents wish to be reconnected with their children or whether they waive that option. It's like, no, that was supposed to be determined before you.
If you ever wanted to get rid of your kid, this was their plot. They were trying. As a parent, I just want to cry, because the notion that somebody would take my child away from me and then I'd get deported.
If a hospital just handed over all the babies to an adoption agency and adopted them out, and the parents are like, "What?" And they're like, "Well, we."
Right.
It's inhuman.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, if somebody...
You didn't give us permission to do it?
Right. If somebody, snatches my kid off the sidewalk, I don't have to then prove that I didn't actually, give up custody of him. That's kidnapping. That's a crime.
Yeah.
And their response would be, well, they came here illegally, and therefore we can do anything we want to them, basically, which is immoral, inhuman,
Yes.
irrelevant.
That's a Christian apologetic, right? The idea that if you if you violate the rules of God, then absolutely any penalty, no matter how harsh, is somehow justified.
It's justified
because you knew you were going to hell. You
God.
sent yourself to hell. And it's the same with parents who beat and abuse their children when they'll say, you know, well, this is something that you knew, and therefore it's okay that I'm hitting you because that you knew that was the penalty. And it's like, no, that's not okay at all. It's not acceptable at all to tell somebody I'm going to do something really messed up and just without empathy, psychotic, like I don't even know what you would call it, you know, just this horrible thing to someone. If they commit some minor infraction, that isn't justified just because you tell them you're going to do it.
Right.
And I really think that the whole reason that they feel like they can dehumanize these people and do this is because they're brown.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think this would be happening if everybody was from Norway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in fact,
which who knew those people were white?
That's
right?
Oh my
God.
Well, right here, Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen has stated repeatedly that no parents were deported without first being given the option to take their children with them. But a Trump administration official told Politico on July 25th that an estimated 3/4 of the parents who left the country alone left no record behind that they ever consented to leave their children in the U.S. We don't see it in the documentation, the official said. Now, I've started calling her Christian who knew Norwegians were white. Nielsen. Yes. Like, that's how I refer to her constantly with the quote middle name section. Because that to me was and the outstanding thing, of course, is that she's got that J. She's got that Nordic J. Like, right there in her name. It's like, really? You don't know this? Yeah. Like, look in a mirror. And I mean, I don't know that she's actually from Norway, but you know, it's
her ancestors probably
she's definitely got a Nordic that Nordic thing going on. It's like you kind of, you know, just all that whole area.
But this woman has gone through life not knowing she's white. How tragic.
Or that it's in any way correlated
now that's fucking
to
privilege, man.
World.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
I bet she doesn't see color.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was part of the wild stuff that was happening. But there's more wild stuff happening with these children. So separated parents unknowingly gave up reunification rights, which dovetails into that last article, right? So in more than a dozen testimonies provided in court Wednesday, this is an article from the 26th, July 26th. In Wednesday, migrant parents separated from their children at the border said they were pressured by immigrant officials to sign forms waiving their reunification rights in a, quote, coercive and misleading manner, unquote. The testimonies were among more than 100 pages of personal declarations compiled by attorneys who have worked closely with detained parents who were directly affected by the Trump administration's zero tolerance policy as it rolled out in early May. And some of the examples were that they weren't given sufficient time to even consider it. The administration argued for a shorter deadline, about 48 hours, which parents must sign a document officially stating their decision. Like, can you imagine being given 48 hours to determine, for example, if you want to give your baby up for adoption? You have 2 days, and at the end of that, you know. I mean, how is that sufficient time to figure out if you want to give up your child? I mean, this is... A lot of people are still undecided at the point of birth, you know, whether they're wanting to give their child up for adoption, and they've had months to consider it, and they're still conflicted when they see. Imagine that you've raised this child for several years, and now somebody is saying, you know, figure it out in a weekend. I mean...
The child that was traumatically ripped from your arms when you were taken into custody, and that you haven't seen probably in, you know, weeks or maybe months, and maybe have had only sporadic phone contact with them, and now they're demanding, you know, you make this decision about giving up your child.
Yeah, and then here's an attorney said, the Guatemalan father appears to understand very little of what is happening in his case and has expressed that he is very confused. Immigration officials asked him to sign a form that would allow his daughter to be released to family members in the United States. He has no idea what this paper said, as he is completely illiterate, and the form was in English. So this is not okay. And I heard there's some recordings of some of the cases with the judges online. If anybody wants to go and check those out, there was one that I posted. I think I posted it to the Godless Bitches page. And it was a judge kind of basically accusing a woman of lying about being in danger if she goes back to her country, and then turning right around and basically saying, I don't think it's okay that I don't think we should have to worry about giving you your child back because there's so much danger going on in your country that, it could be in danger. Right. It's probably better off here. And I'm like, you just told her that you didn't believe her persecution claims. And now you're basically saying that we don't have to give you your kid back because, there's a lot of persecution going on there and the kid could be killed. And it could be in danger if we give him back. So I don't think we should, worry about giving I don't know why you want your kid back. And it's like, well, you just told her you don't even believe that it's dangerous for her to go back. So make up your mind. It was just taunting. He was just taunting her. And here's this woman who, like they're describing, illiterate, doesn't speak English. She's got a translator going on. She's breaking down. And at one point, her attorney's trying to explain to the judge that the woman says she's feeling ill. And I was like, well, I'd feel ill too if I had a judge going at me like that when I was in this situation. I'm in a foreign country. The whole thing was just horrific, the way that they were being treated by, some of the judges were just, you could tell, were just exasperated, not by necessarily the case, but by their situation, which is just an assembly line of deportations. Basically they're there to make sure they send everybody back.
Right.
And so they're just throwing them in, saying, did you cross the border illegally? Okay, then we're deporting you. Are you being persecuted? Can you prove this? It doesn't sound like persecution. Time to go send you back. And it's just this assembly line thing where they're being, herded into the courtrooms and kind of tried together in a 3-minute section where they just, deportation. So this is really a horrific thing. A friend of mine was PMing me last night, I think it was, and she was talking about finding out that her own family had come here and how her relatives from the UK, when they got here, were denied standing in one of the colonies because they didn't have letters vouching for them. So they had to, I guess, go figure out apparently they survived because she's here. But it was just interesting the way she was saying, they weren't like sent back. They weren't packed up and sent back. They could still be here, and so her whole thing is just like, what is this, how, undocumented status has had such a, it's been used in such a way, like her particular relatives were listed as like poor, like they were, weren't economically, well off. And so they were the least, it was like the little quote in the old documentation was basically describing them as, being impoverished. And so she's like, in my case, my family was kind of prejudicially viewed because of their lack of resource. Other people prejudicially viewed because of the color of their skin or the country that they come from, and it's just this way. There's a lot of good documentation online and videos online if you want to go and look at some people have put together some really good pieces on the history of quote illegal immigration in the United States,
a lot of those.
And the racist reasons that we have used it and the groups that we've used it against. And it's not that you couldn't use it against people that are white, because sometimes it was, but in the vast majority of cases, it's about, people from China, people from, everybody that we're just like, oh, these are undesirables, which is usually a euphemism for not white enough, not well off enough.
Yeah, so when we talk about this, at one level, I feel like the sky is falling, but it really is that bad, the way they're treating these people. They're running from something that's life-threatening.
It's a fear-based policy, right? So it's intended to make people afraid and to sort of prey on this on a preconceived notion that you have to defend the border in some kind of way that's like really, really heavy, or else we can't be safe, right? But when you start really looking at what does a person fear, like what is your specific fear of this, and you start really examining that with them, 9 times out of 10, in fact, I don't think I've seen any cases where it didn't work this way, you can find that their fear is really invalid.
Right.
Like the thing that they're most afraid of, especially with the crime stat thing, right? Like that is so wrong. The weird reality is that if everybody in your neighborhood was a first-generation immigrant, you would be less likely to be a victim of a crime. And actually the argument, one person I saw online was actually arguing, well, but they're illegal, so they shouldn't be here anyway, so that crime shouldn't be committed. And I said, you're literally arguing that you would rather that I have a more likelihood, like a higher likelihood of being raped or murdered or, robbed. You think it's better for me to to be surrounded by citizens who are more likely to victimize me than to be in like a sanctuary city with people who are less likely to victimize me.
Right.
Because I should be more freaked out that they're here without a document than I should be that they're a rapist or a murderer or, you know, a mugger or whatever. And so it's really weird, the priority that they're putting on incorrect documentation, expired documentation, no documentation, false documentation. It's like this, you're making a paperwork crime the equivalent of a rape. And do you not understand how really backwards that is if safety and crime is your concern, right? You have to use some judgment, use a filter, use some priorities here. Think about what it is that you're afraid of, because if it's crime, then stop worrying about the immigration. And even in subsequent generations of immigration, they just go to the normal levels of citizen crime, right? So the children of an immigrant will be just as likely as a citizen to commit a crime. So the crime rate's not like spiking because these immigrants are coming in. You're not more likely to be victimized because of this. So it's like this weird thing, and the stats that they're quoting are just ridiculously inflated, badly derived. It's horrible.
Yeah, the thing is, the stats don't need to be inflated because the thing about statistics is that people don't understand them.
Right.
And the human mind, the way it works, the reason we forget things is because our brain deems them irrelevant because we don't hear or see them often enough. Things that we see often enough, we think are important. So we look at the news and we see what is the propaganda often that's put out there about MS-13 and all these things that are so scary.
Right.
And it looks like it's in everybody's backyard. And that's because your brain is programmed, okay, I've seen this like 6 times. It's really a serious problem.
Sure.
It's not.
Right.
That's because of the media making you feel that way. So you have to really step back and get in your logical brain and realize this is your brain and it needs to come into today's age of statistics and realize that it's not that
Well,
way.
it's like airplane crashes and school shootings, right? I mean, it's not that those aren't horrible. Those are horrifying things that I do not condone and would like to see end. But at the end of the day, the majority of gun violence and the majority of gun death is not tied to a school shooting or even a mass shooting. And the majority of people dying in transportation are not dying on plane crashes. Right? I mean, you're safer on a plane than most other modes of travel. So when it comes to like, street travel, for example. And so there's this, like you say, it's more sensational because you have this concentration of people that have died, and so yes, it's a horrific from a pure numbers thing. It's just like even with car accidents. If I have a pileup that kills 18 people, that's going to be more likely to make the news than 2 people get into an accident at an intersection in some nothing city somewhere, and someone got killed or injured. It's just not going to be as sensational and as like you say, it's not going to have the impact on people, but that impact is not indicative of really a larger problem.
Yep.
It's a different problem, with that comes in a more concentrated way, but it's far less likely to occur. And it's definitely not something that, if I was going to walk around being afraid of being shot, mass shootings should be way down on the list compared to, for example, being robbed or being shot in a burglary at a convenience store, or by somebody who's just mad at me that goes home and gets a gun and
you should be. I'm sorry, I want to dovetail on this. Is that okay? All right. So you want to be aware. It dovetails on the evolution thing again. You want to be aware. You want to be concerned. You want to take action. It's the fear thing that your mind naturally goes through in terms of evolution with the overexposure to these things, and your brain says, "Oh my God, they're prevalent. They're not."
Right.
You just have to get to that logical place. I'm sorry.
Well, journalism too. Just real quickly, journalism is all about the idea that it's not on the news because it's common.
Right.
It's on the news because it's uncommon. Right. So when you're seeing it on the news, quote, all the time, it's still an uncommon thing, or it wouldn't be on the news.
Yep.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
No, it gets to the fact that humans in general are fundamentally bad at assessing risks, and especially when you get to a place where you're making decisions based on fear. Fear is a horrible basis for decision making.
Yes.
And we see the same kind of thing happen when the anti-abortion people focus on, look at how many women regret their abortions and all. The number of women who regret having an abortion is very, very small. In fact, there are more people who regret their total knee replacement surgeries than regret abortion. And it's not even close, guys. But you don't see any lawmakers jumping up and down screaming about we need to have a 72-hour wait period and you need to be given all this other garbage information about total knee replacements because so many people regret them.
Yeah.
You know, we just look at that and say, hey, you know, sometimes you have to make a decision and then you have to own responsibility for that decision.
Absolutely.
And even if you regret it, you still have the right to make that decision.
And think back in your life at how many things you regret and then ask yourself, do I really think that should be illegal?
Right. Or that someone else should make that decision for me.
Right. I regret past relationships, like romantic relationships. Therefore, the state should choose my spouse.
Right.
Like, who really believes that? I shouldn't be allowed to date. It should be illegal for me to, like, go out and have romantic, relationships. I should just be told who to get with.
Yeah. But I mean, this same sort of thing is at play when we're talking about immigrants. It's not like swarms of immigrants are wading across the Rio Grande, and the first thing they do is say, "Oh, where can I find a gun so I can shoot up a school?"
Yeah.
I mean, from the way people talk about this, that talk about, oh, we got to secure our borders, you would think that that's what's happening.
Right. And the other thing, I mean, Austin, of course, is a sanctuary city, so we've got a dog in the fight when it comes to that battle as well.
Right.
And all of our law enforcement and all of our, city council and basically everyone who lives here who understands the issue gets why sanctuary cities are a good idea. And if you don't believe it, you can go and look at statistics for crime in sanctuary cities, and they are generally safer than lots of cities of similar sizes. So and part of the reason for that is that it's always helpful for law enforcement to be able to work with members of the community on solving crimes. Right. So if someone is victimized and people feel comfortable and trusting of the police and they feel a camaraderie and feel like they are partnering with the police, it is much more likely that they're going to come forward, go to the police, say, hey, I saw something, I heard something, I want to report that I was victimized, I want to report that I saw someone victimized, I saw something
and
weird.
This is especially important when you're talking about people who come from places where the police might be corrupt, where you just don't go to the police.
Might be.
Yeah, might be. Probably are.
Yeah.
Okay, and so it's very important for them to trust the police department and to come forward when that. And the interesting thing about that is that when you don't have a sanctuary city, you still have the undocumented immigrants there.
Right.
But they don't go to the police. And ironically enough, they're the most likely to be victimized by crime or, criminal elements. Probably people who have proper documentation.
Yeah, but it's been, the police here in Austin and the sheriff's department and even in surrounding areas here are very vocal about the fact that they want to have partnership with the communities and that is safer for them, safer for citizens. It just helps them do their job. And when you start cutting that off and telling them that they have to be against the community. And especially, I just posted this really good piece of research earlier that I shared on Godless Bitches page, also on my own page, where it talks about how when you make that the standard and then you drum up the rhetoric against the Hispanic population of immigrants, then everybody in the city who is Hispanic becomes affected by that, right? Like if people start looking at their friends and neighbors in a suspicious way, I don't know you, you're Hispanic, are you one of those people? Right. Should I be reporting you? Should I, And so it starts to really affect the whole Hispanic population of the city, not just somebody who might not have documentation. And we saw this with the Muslim rhetoric when that got heated, and people who were, for example, Indian were getting attacked because they were wearing a turban, and so it was